What is up, guys? Episode 6 here. This episode, I'm going to be interviewing Marty Hansen. Marty is an instructor in marketing and management for the University of Northern Iowa. He is just, besides that, he's an awesome dude. I've known Marty for a few years now, but really haven't gotten the chance to really sit down with him and talk to him and pick his brain, ask him questions, get to know him a little better. So I'm really stoked for this. I had a lot of fun hanging out with him, talking. Our topic, or we started talking about random things here and there, but he gives a little insight on what it's like to be a professor, some trends maybe in marketing and management, sales, business, things like that. I kind of asked a little questions about student loans, debt, that kind of stuff. So we talk a little bit about money. We talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. Like I said, I'm glad I got a chance to sit down with him. It's been a long time coming, and he's a really awesome guy, and he has a lot of energy, and he has a lot of enthusiasm, and he wants to help people. So he's the perfect guest for this episode. So hope you guys enjoy it. One thing before we get started here, if you haven't, please subscribe to us, like us, share us, iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud. Any help you can give to me, I would greatly appreciate it. All you got to do is click subscribe. I'm not going to bombard you with posts, this, that. It just helps me out a little bit. So if you like the episodes, if you're getting something out of it, shoot a little subscription my way on that iTunes or YouTube. That's going to help a brother out tremendously, and I appreciate it. And I just appreciate all the support so far. We're on episode 6. So we're getting there. We're going. So really excited for this one. So without further ado, Marty Hansen.
Some nice equipment you got.
All right, we're here with Marty. So it's been a while since I talked to you, Marty.
Yes, it has been a while.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really good. And I want to thank you right out of the gate for having me on your podcast. That's awesome.
Well, I want to thank you. You're really my first, I don't want to say first real guest, but all my other guests have been either me or friends or family. So
Gotcha.
This is a big moment for me, I guess.
It's such a big moment. I'm turning off my phone.
Wow.
So it does not ring while we're talking today. So yeah, awesome. I'm happy to be here. It's nice to see what you're doing. It really is. It's pretty good stuff. Really good stuff.
So you're an Eagles fan?
Oh, I'm from Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
I thought you were from New York, or did you work in New York or something?
I worked in New York City. Yeah.
Okay.
So my story is I grew up. I spent most of my life actually probably about 15 minutes from what was then Veterans Stadium, where the Philadelphia Eagles at that time played. Yeah. So I grew up just,
Die hard.
Oh yeah. I grew up, I mean, and it's funny because when I listened to your podcast last week, it really identified with me because you talked about greatness, and I totally get that. And I think a lot of people in this part of the world, especially, where we don't have a professional sports team, like especially in the immediate area, or in the entire state of Iowa for that matter, there's something really. It's hard to describe, but there's like a real special loyalty that you get, especially when you're passionate about a team that has never, made the ultimate, goal of winning the Super Bowl. So a lot of years and years of frustration, in the city of brotherly love, which. It's funny, you talked a lot about fans and fan behavior, and I can I can say that I'm with you all the way on that, you know, and seeing some of that fan behavior, especially with the Vikings when they came into town, you know,
and it's not just the Eagles.
Well, no, it's not. But the Eagles Eagles fans have a reputation, and that really, from my perspective, is disappointing because it's not obviously not everybody, but there's enough of them to create the stereotype that we're the worst fans in the world, you know. So.
I know when I said, I mean, I don't have kids yet, but I worry about taking them to, and there's just drunk people yelling and screaming. You don't want to have your kids around that.
Totally not. I mean, we would not have our children want to be in that environment in any way, shape, or form, you know. So,
and to me, that's like the saddest thing is because that's who you want to take to the games. You want to give them the experience that they growing up. I went to the Eagles games with my dad, and had so much fun.
Yeah, and it's fan behavior is really an important part of that environment, and when it goes bad like that, it leaves a sour taste, even in a loyal fan's mouth. You know, it really does. You know. So I get it.
You can adjust that down if you
can.
Want.
I? Yeah, I'm really. Is making me really sit up straight.
Yeah, well, it's good for your posture.
It's very great for my posture.
So you're excited. Eagles won.
Yeah, I was. I'm not gonna lie. There was a moment when I was sitting alone that I actually cried. I mean, tears of joy. You know, as a I'm not ashamed to talk about my age. I mean, I'm 55 years old. I mean, it's been a long time, you know, since we've had something as exciting as winning the Super Bowl to celebrate. So, and again, I've lived in Iowa for 15 years now, but you know, you can take the boy out of the city, but you can't take the city out of the boy.
Yeah, when you grew up rooting for him, it kind of...
Yeah.
See, like, I'm in no man's land because we don't have a team, or we have a few Midwest teams that everyone kind of clings to, but... You know, I've never had that really experience.
I know.
The only thing I can equate it to is going to UNI. Like, I root for UNI anytime they play. I don't follow them, but, you know, I'm loyal to them, I guess.
Right. As am I, since it's my place of employ, you know. So I totally get it. There's a lot of passion for the colleges and universities in Iowa. I will say that. It's just as I tell my friends, you know, it's just really different, you know, when you come from a professional sports city, you know. So
I don't know, but right. So with that being said, you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
What do you do around here?
So I am. I'm actually my title. I want to be clear on my title because when you teach at the university, there's actually quite a few different titles. Though all the students tend to refer to you as professor. My actual title is instructor in marketing and management for the University of Northern Iowa. A job I've been doing now for 9 years. So.
How is that different than a professor?
Yeah, it's a great question. So professors typically will have a PhD.
Okay.
And their role in having that PhD is to actually produce research that gets published, and obviously it benefits the university, and it's a credit to the university to have your works published. And it serves as a really important part of the university's accreditation.
Okay.
So we have an accreditation board that we have to maintain our standard on, and because of that, you know, you'll see that's one of the reasons universities hire PhDs that have to produce research. You know, so in my role, we have two different types of qualifications. One's professionally qualified and the other's academically qualified. And your PhDs are going to be what are called academically qualified. I'm a professionally qualified instructor. So my background and experience is of such substance that it qualifies me to teach at the university. One of those big things is having a master's degree.
Okay.
So I do not have a PhD. And if I did have a PhD, then I would be technically a doctor and would be qualified to be called professor at the university. Even though, like I said, students default to professor, which is always odd when I hear them call me that at the university. It still sounds a little awkward.
So you're still full time at the university?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I am full time, and I work in the College of Business, and specifically the marketing department and the management department, where I teach our sales program, which is actually a very, very important part of the marketing department right now. The role of salespeople in the world today is really, really a lot more magnified than it used to be. Okay. And you probably don't know this, but since I teach, I kind of have to know what's going on with sales.
Keep your ear to the ground.
Yeah, and believe it or not, 6 to 7 students out of every 10 students will have their first job out of college in sales as a sales job.
Just in general, students?
So they're not business students, they're not marketing students, just they're university students. So maybe they got a comm degree, or a humanities degree, or like my significant other, she has a biology degree and wound up in a sales job, you know. So the cool thing about what I do in the College of Business is I don't get to teach just business students that sales course. I get all students from all over the university, and it's really interesting. It makes the course and the class a lot more interesting when you have that diversity.
Right. So I can imagine other people from different fields are looking at different aspects of business, not just the business, but I'm guessing there's different avenues that they want to take that are non-traditional, maybe.
Correct.
Depending on their interests.
Interests. Yep.
So that gives you a unique challenge to try and help them, maybe potentially. It gives you something.
I really enjoy when I have a non-business student in my class. Actually, they perform as well and sometimes better than my business students, believe it or not. And again, Andy, you asked me to come on your show and speak, and I thought, well, what do I want to talk about? And my job at the university is really to build confidence in young people, and it's always exciting when I get an interior design major, for example, who wants to design and wants to make homes look beautiful, for people. I say to them, well, in order to do that, you have to go out and be able to sell yourself on your skill set. And so I've found that, in your college years, that's really the time where you start building that confidence. And part of my job's to help build it. Yeah.
I think that's like the hardest part for, at least me going through and other younger people, is just selling, you've never had to sell yourself because I remember when I got out of college, I was like, I have my bachelor's degree, I'm going to get a job now. It's my degree. And then later on, when I went back to school, I was doing my gen eds, and a professor, I wish he would have told me that, I wish I would have had him when I was 18. He said, degrees don't equal jobs. And that's stuck with me ever since. And it's just no one my age knows how to sell themselves really, or, I don't know. It's a weird life transition.
I think a lot of kids struggle, and I use the term kids because to me, everybody's a kid these days. They really, really don't. They may have the ability to communicate with one another, but it's those moments where you have to be on your game, selling yourself, convincing somebody why you're the best candidate for a job, and they suddenly realize, wow, I've never done this before, or
Yeah.
I've done this once before, and it was when I was interviewing to work in a fast food restaurant. You know, the level of importance was different. You know, now it's the real world, and I have to pay back my student loans. Yeah, there's a high sense of urgency
and stress.
Oh, yeah, and that's when you're the most nervous, is when there's pressure, right?
Yeah.
So my job really is to help that student deal with that moment of pressure, and the best way is just to practice, you know. And if I can get my class engaged in practicing as if they are interviewing with someone, that gives them a different level of confidence when they're faced with the real situation.
So when you say practice, are you just doing a lot of mock interviews, or what kind of what?
So that's a great question.
Because one of the reasons I started my podcast, a little reason, is that I wanted to be better at talking to people and interviewing people, and just my interpersonal skills. So I think that's going to help me in the long run.
I would say definitely to that. Yeah.
So, what do you guys do to practice those kind of skills, or what would you say?
No, that's a great question. So half of the battle in my classroom is just getting students to dialogue. So I do two things that are really important. One is we do something known as sales role play, where in my class, I will give you, I call them a case, but really what it is, it's a scenario. Okay, I'll give you one example. I always start off my classes with having the students sell Heinz dip and squeeze ketchup packets. Okay. Now, for those of you out there in the audience that might not be familiar with a dip and squeeze packet, you'll find them at like Chick-fil-A, for example. They're actually look like a little container of ketchup, and you're selling that Heinz dip and squeeze packet to the Burger King franchise. So, you know, some students were like, well, who cares? I'm selling a packet of ketchup, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it matters a lot when you're selling a bazillion of them to Burger King who's going to use them. Yep, exactly.
Right.
And you know, there's a whole process that a student needs to go through in my class to understand what questions do I ask, and how do I get the potential buyer to start talking. Because most students will be they'll sit down and they'll start talking about their product and why it's so great, and they'll talk about themselves. Hey, I've been doing this for a while, so I really know what I'm doing, you know. When in actuality, the best skill you can learn is how to ask questions. So I teach my students to ask questions of a potential buyer, because what that does is it gets the buyer talking. And the more you talk to somebody, and you should know this doing what you're doing, when someone's asking you questions and giving you the opportunity to talk about yourself, about your company, that actually makes you feel really good about the person you're engaging with. And that really helps to build rapport, which in turn helps to build trust. And trust is a really big key component of how you get a sale. You know, somebody needs to trust you in order to do business with you. And it's the same with a job interview. I mean, when students I teach them how to interview, they are essentially selling themselves, you know.
So what do you say to someone who says, I'm not selling this ketchup, you know, I'm not passionate about that, but if it was a new skateboard brand or something, you know, I would knock it out of the park? Or what do you say to those people?
I say, great. You should really be passionate about what you represent.
Because it's hard to get up for a ketchup packet.
Right.
You know?
Right. Now, that being said, the scenario with that is that the Burger King franchise has a terrible ketchup packet, and a lot of customers are unhappy with the ketchup packet, so much so that they've taken to social media to vent their frustration. So I talk about the fact that sometimes, you know, you're not selling a ketchup packet, but you're selling a solution to someone's problem. So if you're the type of person that feels good when you actually help somebody, well,
doesn't matter what the product
is. Right. You know, let me put it to you this way. In a perfect world, you would sell something you really, really, truly loved and believed in. Right. But we all know it's not a perfect world. So if I can change the lens a little bit and help you look at it a little bit deeper than just on the surface, well, then maybe I'm creating a different level of satisfaction in you when you get up in the morning and go to work. You know, if you realize, you know, I'm selling insurance, well, no, you're helping to protect people from the unknown. You know, you're helping to mitigate risk. You're helping to minimize the chance of their lives being totally ruined. You know, because insurance is probably one of the most boring products out there. I sold it for years. That's how I got my career started. But if I look at it as, wow, I'm really solving problems that people haven't even experienced yet, well, then I felt a little bit better about doing the job, and it made it palatable, you know?
Right. I think that's when you talk about selling insurance, I mean, immediately I just roll my eyes and cringe, you know,
everybody tenses up, right?
But if you can change the way you think about it, I mean, that's with everything, you know?
Yeah. One of my favorite stories is a sales manager for an insurance firm, and he talks about how, you know, he convinced his buddy to buy insurance from him, you know, and unfortunately his buddy was killed in an accident, and his buddy was married and had a very, very small child. And he said, you know, I have great satisfaction knowing that because I convinced him to buy a $500,000 insurance policy, his wife, you know, and his child have a higher level of security than they had had they not bought that, had he not sold that product, you know. So it's interesting.
Yeah,
it's all how you look at it,
right? You know, no one thinks selling insurance is important, but until you look at it that way, it is.
Yeah. It really has high impact. So yeah, that's one of the things that in the classroom I do. The other thing is I get students involved in making a presentation in front of the class. There's nothing more fearful than having to talk in front of a large audience. Yeah. You know, and again, these are little moments in a young person's life where, you know, if you can do something like that, if you have an opportunity in a safe environment, which is my classroom, right? You know, it makes things a lot better when you're out there in the real world and, you know, your job's on the line. You know, you got to make this great presentation to a number of people. Yeah. And I'm teaching you all the things you need to do to be confident when you have to do it, you know. So
that's something that we do a lot in our program is we're always given little mini presentations in class, but like you said, it's that safe environment. And one of the things at the end of this semester, we're just finishing up our research group, so then we'll have to present as a group in front of like the community, but it'll probably mostly be the college and the hospital. So that's kind of our final culmination of.
Right. So look at what the culmination of your program is having to make that presentation, right? Right. So again, the community, the business world identifies as, how do we test greatness? You know, we put you on the spot. We ask you to get up in front of people and talk confidently, speak confidently about something, you know.
And that's something within my job, but in the future of occupational therapy, is I'll have to give presentations to CNAs or hospitals or community programs, you know.
It's going to be a big part of your job.
Yeah. So, you know, it's something that, like I said, this podcast will hopefully make me better at, and just talking and moving my lips, you know.
Yeah, that's it's really interesting. And like I've said to you in the past, when I found out you were doing these, I really admire the process and how you've gone forward with it. I mean, it's really cool. Yeah. I like it.
We're working on it. So let's get back to, like, how did you become an educator, and what were you doing before that?
So I never ever in my life planned to be an educator. I'm a blue collar kid from just outside of Philadelphia. My story's, certainly not an exciting one. I grew up with blue collar parents. My mom was stay-at-home mom, and it was a small community in southern New Jersey. My dad wanted me to go to college. I was the first to go to college in our family, one of those stories. And I left college actually wanting to be a copywriter, an advertising copywriter in an ad agency. Okay. But that did not pay very well, I found out. Again, one of the things that I didn't learn in college is, how do those jobs pay? And so I wound up working in banking in a marketing department, doing some creative work. I was writing checking account brochures, as fun and creative as that can be, So from there, I got a different type of job in marketing for another bank. I developed a unique product in the banking world because, again, being a marketing person, promotion is just one aspect of marketing. The product itself is another aspect of it. So I created a product that didn't exist in the banking world before, which was a home equity line of credit that had a credit card tied to it, which in previous institutions, the product had a checkbook tied to it. So when you wanted to use your line, you wrote a check, but we introduced a credit card. It had never been done before. It was wildly popular, and the product still exists today. This is back in 1987 to give you some timeline. Okay. And so from there, I gained a degree of notoriety and wound up fortunate enough to work for General Electric Company. From there, I moved on. I typically job hopped about every 5 years.
That's what they say.
Yeah. So my goal really was just to be wealthy, make money. My dad was like, he just wanted me to be successful, and success equaled wealth. Right. Now, I'm here to tell you many years later that I don't define it the way my dad did,
At one point, did you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I very much lost my way in terms of happiness and satisfaction because of it. Right. Because my parents, focused very much on me being successful and making a lot of money. What I was terrible at was my personal relationship. I got married very young. I was 20 when I got married. I was still in college. And we started having a family. I had my first child when I was 25. And at that same time, I was very focused on my career because that equaled money. Right. And as a result, I was never home. I was working all the time. And then I began traveling as part of my job, yet finding some time in between to have another child and then a third child. Right. And my 3 kids and my wife at the time never saw me. I was a slave to my job. I probably worked 60, 70 hours a week. And I was very successful by many standards. I moved on to General Motors Acceptance Corp, GMAC, all in their financial arms. So I was working in mortgage and insurance my whole career. Which again can be very lucrative if you're in sales and marketing. But at the same time, I remember I came home from a business trip once, and we had a party at my house, and my wife at the time commented to our guests that her and the kids look forward to when I am not home. And this came right after one of our guests asked my wife what I did, and she couldn't tell them. Right. She literally, we had our level of communication between us had broken down to the extent that she didn't even really know what I did for a living. Right. And the fact that they were more happy when I wasn't there than when I was there was, again, another sign that I had checked out from the relationship and the marriage. And so, of course, the inevitable divorce occurred. And in 2001, I learned, that the corporate business world is not loyal to you like your family is. Right. So I got fired. A week after I got fired, I had a major heart attack. I was 38 years old. So relatively young man. And
you had a lot going on at that point.
At that point, yeah. Right? Yeah. So, in 2001, I got fired. I got divorced. 9/11 occurred, and I had worked in Tower 1 of the Trade Center and had a number of friends die in that catastrophe, disaster, and all these other personal things going on that were terrible. And I decided to make a huge change in my life, and I moved here to Iowa.
Did you know anybody now?
I did. GMAC had an operation here, so I was coming out here anyway, but okay. I certainly wasn't living here full time. Right. So I made a decision. I packed up and moved away from all of my family. All my family's in southern New Jersey. So it was a huge change. Yeah. And I had no job. I knew very few people. I happened to have been dating a person at the time from Waverly, Iowa. And that relationship wasn't a great one, and it didn't last. But I had the courage to do something for myself, which was I opened a wine bar on Main Street here in Cedar Falls. So
I think I remember.
Yeah, yeah. You were probably a young pup back then.
I remember going in with my mom.
Yeah.
Wine and chocolate.
Wine and chocolate. Yeah, it was called Indulgence, and I had that wine shop for 8.5 years, and I enjoyed. The part of it I really, really enjoyed was the customer experience and being able to interact with people and making people happy. Right. So for the first time in my life, I wasn't really focused on how much money can I make. I was really focused on making people happy, which gave me a different level of satisfaction than I'd ever had before, So
it's quite the turn of events from,
isn't it? Yeah. At 40 years old, I was learning how to work the cash register for the first time in my life.
That's funny.
Yeah. So from there, a number of my customers and patrons were faculty and administration from the university. And I ultimately, through a connection, was offered an adjunct teaching position, which led to what I have now, which is a full-time position.
Right on. That's kind of weird.
Yeah. Isn't it?
You think of a lot of people think of all these paths they have to take, or like they think there's a set path to everything, and for some things there's a set path.
Right.
If you want to become a doctor, you need a lawyer. You need to go this way, but you never thought you were going to be an educator. Or it's weird.
But what I tell students now is, what's your path to happiness? I understand you want to have this professional career, but think deeper, think broader than that,
Yeah, what happens when you get there?
Yeah.
What happens when you reach the top, and then then what?
Yeah. And how are you balancing your life? You can't work all the time.
Right.
So what are you doing to make the world a better place? What are you doing to make, the people in your life feel good,
Right. It's a hard lesson to learn.
Oh, it's a terribly hard lesson to learn. And that's why I'd rather tell you about it than have you experience it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it and all your honesty. So let's talk a little bit about social media and stuff. And
yeah, sure.
What are you telling business or advertisers or marketing people? What's the future like?
It's funny because I do some consulting work as part of keeping myself professionally qualified. And so I deal with a lot of smaller business owners, and it's very interesting. They tend to be somewhat resistant to change, and they're even more so resistant to thinking that social media can offer them the advertising and marketing solutions that it actually offers in a actually a much more effective and efficient fashion than traditional.
Getting a commercial.
Yeah, doing a TV spot or a radio spot, and and so what's really changing is it's a whole mindset change that I really work on, and the fact of the matter is social media is the most effective and the most efficient way to talk to people about
what's going on, how I can solve your problem, you know what I can do for you. And the challenge is because there's still a degree of infancy about it, and we see that with how Russia has been able to manipulate social media with some of the things that they've been doing, and I think it's created for a lot of people a higher level of distrust these days about what's real and what's not real. Is this story I'm reading really accurate? And should I share it? Should I put it on my post? They used to say, "Don't believe anything you read on the internet," and now it's like extrapolated times 10. Like, got to fact check.
Yeah.
See who fact checked.
Well, everybody kind of raises an eyebrow now, and where'd you hear about that? Oh, I heard about that on the internet. Now everybody's like, yeah, not sure.
Yeah.
So today and what's interesting is our students today at the university, it's not coursework I teach, but we have a number of faculty involved in teaching people how to really engage effectively in that social media. It's not easy. I mean, it's really complicated. So much so that I'm actually hoping to sit in and audit some of the classes so I can increase my level of knowledge about it. One of the things I know we do is there's a class students take now taught by a professor by the name of Matthew Wilson, and he makes students create a brand for themselves. So that's literally what they're doing the whole course, I
need to take that class.
Yes, you would. I thought of you. You would love that class. Yeah. I mean, it would be. I should talk to him about letting you audit that class. I'll have to chat him up about that.
See if he'll come on.
Yeah, you know what? He would actually be a phenomenal guest. Yeah, you would love him. I'll talk. Yeah. I'll just ask.
Say help a brother out.
Yeah, that's what I'll say. And our offices adjoin each other, so we have a higher level of relationship than maybe some of the other staff there.
Yeah, we'll get you both on it.
Yeah, and we're both professionally qualified. Right. He has a really interesting background. He's a graduate of Yale, and he worked on Madison Avenue in New York. So he'll be and I say he'll be because I know he'll do this. This would be really interesting and right up his alley. So he'll be a great guest for you to have on your podcast. I'll tell you that right now. So
I'm excited.
Yeah, you should be because. God, I love listening to him. He is really an intelligent guy, and he really knows what's going on with the social media marketing. Yeah. So,
well, I see, like, when I think of social media, I think of all these younger business owners or younger things just killing it, and it's all marketing on social media. They're marketing to 18 to 35, and then you see these older business owners who haven't really gotten into it yet, and they're struggling.
They're struggling. Oh yeah. Yeah, they really are. And, part of that struggle is the cost because they expect it to be free.
Right.
Oh, it's social media. I could just put it on there. And it just doesn't work that way. They've really missed the mark. And I have to, part of my sales work is to present a valid case for spending $2 to $3 grand a month to promote yourself on social media, not something that people are comfortable with,
I think it would be easier obviously it'd be easier if they started with social media, but I don't think you have to spend as much, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you kind of grew up with it and you kind of slowly build a brand through that, because I think, there's just hundreds of businesses that have started off Twitter or Instagram, and it's just they take off. And
yeah, what you're talking about is the grassroots effect, and that's very valid. And there's a lot of people that will start a grassroots effort, and they build their community. They have lots of followers, and where things then begin to change is, oh, well, I've got 10,000 followers. What's that worth to you? For me to be talking about your product or service, for me to be communicating a message that benefits you.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you're monetizing, your influence on people, and your ability to get them to be swayed in one direction or another. Right. So there's a value to that. And as a potential advertiser, I expect certainly someday, somebody's going to say, "Oh, Andy, I want you to talk about my product here, on your podcast."
That's the goal. I mean, I listen to podcasts all the time, and all these small startup companies are throwing their ads on podcasting, and they're blowing up. And a lot of people advertisers at least haven't realized the market of podcasting and realized there's, some podcasts have 20 million downloads a month and 20 million people to hear your product. So once that catches on, I think it'll be
right. And an older generation just is taking a lot longer to be accepting of that.
And it's just moving so fast, even for us to keep up, to younger kids to keep up. It's,
Well, it's funny because obviously I knew you wanted me to talk a little bit about it, and I'm always reluctant to talk about it because I'm not living in it, and I get scared because of how rapidly things change. Right. So I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to even bring up Snapchat. They just made some changes that people are really upset about, and I'm not sure I fully understand them. So I don't want to talk about things I'm not fully understanding of, So it's, to your point, the pace of change is crazy.
Right. You almost need 2 or 3 people on it just to stay ahead of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what else do we want to talk about? Oh, big one. This is for all my students out there.
Okay.
Listening.
Okay.
So this is something... I'll just give you my personal story.
We're having a conversation here.
Student loans, I have a lot of them. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have a little bit more before we're done. What do you tell students now? Before I preface that, I know you just said something earlier about getting a job that has money. And foolish me, when I was younger, I was like, I don't really care if my job makes money. I just want to do what I love to do. And now I'm fortunate enough to find a career that I can have both.
You're one of the lucky ones.
But now I'm also in more debt, etc. So how do we start digging out of that?
Well, one of the challenges for younger people, especially today, is that parents want their children to do something that makes them happy. Unfortunately, there's a process involved where I tell students, look, you got to figure out that if what makes you happy is also able to make you live comfortably or in a just the way you want to live, if you want to live in a $300,000 house, then you better figure out that if what's making you happy work-wise isn't doing that, then you got to do something else, right? So a lot of students today leave with tremendous debt, and it's one of the reasons my sales program and the classes I teach are so popular, because a job in sales tends to be a stepping stone toward something that ultimately may make them happy or satisfied in their career, So, if you wanted to eventually work in the healthcare profession, well, then maybe medical equipment sales might be a good start for you, to get into that space. And I say that because, again, I'm very passionate about the fact that sales jobs are good jobs. They help people figure their lives out, figure out a lot about themselves. And if you can be trained with the right skills to sell, it can open the door to again, those other jobs that, you know, I really wanted to, you know, I really wanted to be, you know, have a different role in healthcare than selling. Okay. Well, you know, you got to get in the door, and a lot of sales jobs are entry level jobs for the industry you want to be in. So, you know, having a tremendous amount of debt when you get out of college is just that a very thick extra layer of stress.
It's always looming.
Yeah, it's always looming. Yeah, people aren't okay with you saying, "Hey, look, get back to me next month. I'm not going to be able to make my you know, my loan payment this month." No one in the financial world is okay with that, you know. So learning how to manage your money becomes another component of what we want students to leave college with an understanding of, you know. And Andy, I can't tell you how many students don't have that figured out.
I didn't have it figured out.
Okay, well, you're in good company.
Right. I still don't have it figured out.
So you have to take a look at what your debt is, and you have to figure out, you know, okay, how am I going to pay this back and live comfortably? And it sometimes means working a second job. You know, I wish students had it figured out before they got out so they could plan accordingly. That's really the secret sauce. But, you know, I have to keep in mind that these are people that are in their teens, their late teens, early 20s for the most part. That is a time when the world is just exploding around you. You've been given a new sense of freedom because you're typically away from your parents, or at least your parents don't have that same level of control over you. And most people will just kind of move in a different direction for a while, you know, where having my own responsibility and having to make my own decisions is something I want. I'm loving it, but you wind up ultimately
I want to make my own mistakes.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And, you know, the challenge is that debt's always looming.
Right.
You still have to pay that back, you know, and sometimes it's just impossible to get that through to someone, you know. So having an opportunity to talk about it, at least will get some of your listeners thinking about it. And again, I can't emphasize enough, you know, when I talk about, hey, I like to see my students get a job in sales, it's partly because of how well it pays, you know. And most of my sales students that leave their first job in sales when they graduate from UNI is paying $50,000 to $55,000 a year. And believe it or not, that is I have not yet had a student say, I'm struggling financially,
right.
You know? So, yeah,
well, think about I always think about the most I ever made after my undergrad was like around $30,000 a year. And I just remember when I was making that, I was like, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I'm rolling.
I have a stepson who's making about that much now. And he's living large,
yeah,
you know.
But now it kind of scares me with my student loans coming. I mean, I'll be making more, but my plan at least is to try and live off half of what I have,
right.
Or me and Christy together live off one of our incomes, and the other income goes to debt until we can.
So that's the other piece of it, right? Yeah. So you're in a partnership with someone else. You know, so you're helping to share some of that burden, and it's understood between both parties, you know. So, hey, there's some value in that, you know. Today, we're seeing more and more students, more and more graduates, more and more young people choosing not to get into serious relationships right out of the gate. You know, they don't want that level of commitment. You know, so that doesn't help solve their problem, you know. You're fortunate enough that, hey, this is a choice you've made, and you're in a healthy, positive relationship, and the two of you communicate well, obviously, so you're able to plan that together. That's awesome, you know. I can tell you that I'm quite certain that not all your listeners are in that situation.
It's easier said than done. We'll see, like, when push comes to shove, you know.
Oh yeah.
If we'll have the what's the word I'm looking for? If we'll actually go through with it, you know, because it's hard when, you know, when you do get your first professional paycheck and you've never seen, you know, $2,000 in a month. And
there was a year when my salary went from, I was making $34,000 a year, and I jumped to another place and my salary went to $90,000 a year. Okay.
Different.
Yeah. So like, you know, all of a sudden, you know, and I was surviving on 34 grand a year, you know. My wife and I at the time, we were like, what the heck to do with all this money, you know? Again, our blue collar roots and who we were as people, you know, we were like, oh, we better save this. This isn't going to last forever, you know? So we reacted, you know, in a way that, you know, maybe not everybody's going to react that way. You know, people will go out and
pick stuff up that they need.
Yeah. You know, all of a sudden you're buying a car that's, you know, maybe 20 grand more than you might normally have paid for one, because you want to be a little bit flashy, or you want comfort, you know, whatever the case may be.
You see it all the time. People graduate college and they're like, we got my big boy job. Gonna get a new car now. Gonna get a house. Yep. And then you're just even strapped even further.
Right. And I think part of it is, you know, the generation is, you know, we talk a lot about ourselves these days. I mean, selfies, our stories. We share a lot about who we are and what we're doing because it makes us feel good. What can spiral out of control is the materialism tied to that can then put you into even more debt. You know, so it's really important for a student to figure out, again, what makes me happy internally, you know, and focus more on you and growing as an individual versus, you know, getting something that you can show off to your friends and get that temporary moment where you think everybody's thrilled to death. And I always say to students, well, how do you feel when you see somebody else's show off thing? You know, how do you feel about that? Because that's exactly how everybody feels when you do it. You know, oh, that's kind of cool. And then you move on. You're not worried about how are they going to make the payments on that. You don't think about it at all afterwards. But you, the person, all of a sudden now are burdened with that. You know, a new car isn't that great after 90 days. You know,
when the payments kicked in, when you're paying $600-700 a month on it plus gas.
Exactly.
That's what I always say when I see people with new trucks or something like that. I'm just like, that's more than my house payment.
Right. You know, and it's funny because, you know, obviously my customers are all in their 20s. So, you know, they'll be like, oh, you know, you got a big new truck. That's awesome. Yeah, well, I'm 55. I've been around a while. I deserve a big new truck at this point in my life, you know.
Worked a little bit for
I've worked hard to get to this point, you know. But you know, again, I really want students to understand, you know, reality here, you know, and reality's on a different timeline than what I think a lot of people look at. So when I say that, I mean, you know, consider what you want and what it'll be like in 12 months, having the debt associated with that want, you know. So, and if in 12 months I'm still as good as I am today, great. Then maybe you should go for it. But if, oh, wow, I didn't realize all these other things I'll be needing. Well, gosh, maybe you shouldn't get the jingle right away. Maybe you should wait a little while to get something, you know, like that, you know. So
you can spiral out of control pretty fast, though.
Oh, it totally can. Totally can, you know. And I do urge students to, you know, leverage the value that their family brings to the equation, you know. So if your parents still want you around or they want to carry you on their health insurance till you're 26, go ahead. Don't, you know, take advantage of that, you know, because that'll help you, you don't need to be so proud that you're off, I'm going to show them that I can make it work, well, okay, great. But your parents don't need to be impressed typically that way, right. So your parents will enjoy these years where they still can, provide for you. Yep, totally.
Because when you're gone, that's one of the things we talk about is just people's roles in life. And obviously when your kids leave, you don't have that role of a parent, and you seek that provider role, and see these moms getting 3 or 4 dogs and treating them like because they don't have the kids at home.
That's exactly right. And for your listeners, I'm very fortunate in that I still have many children in my life. My oldest is 30 years old. My oldest child's 30, but my youngest child is 15 months old. So I have essentially a baby running around, and we have all age ranges in between 15, 22, 26, 28. So I really do understand those generations, especially, when you consider that my teaching job surrounds me with children as well, young people, I should say.
So do you think you're still going to teach?
It's a great question.
You got a 5-year plan? You don't have to give anything away.
No, I really feel a huge debt of gratitude to the University of Northern Iowa for giving me the opportunity to teach there. And I hope to be able to do it until I'm 70 years old. That's my game plan. I'm 55. I want to be 70. I want to be 70 years old when I retire. And some people might not understand that, but let me just say that if I love teaching. So honestly, I just don't feel like I'm going to work.
Right.
I really never look at my job as, this job. Right. I love what I do. And so in a sense, I am retired from work, right now.
That's one thing I could sense from you when I first got to know you is you like young kids. Young kids, but you like. I think you feed off their energy and they feed off yours.
That's exactly what it is. I'm very young at heart. My family always comments that I still am a child. I was in class yesterday and there were a couple of advertising sales terms we were talking about, and I was laughing like a child because one of them was a crazy word. It's called lubrication. Lubrication is a sales term when you give small amounts of money to officials for perfectly legal acts. You're lubricating or greasing palms. But I said the word lubrication, and I started laughing hysterically. As did my students, and I made the comment. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm still a child, and I was actually being very serious about that.
Yeah.
So I do feed off of the energy of young people, and I'm not afraid to engage with young people. I think a lot of older people feel somewhat intimidated, and vice versa. I think sometimes young people are. Again, it's the whole age generation gap that I teach about it in class. I mean, when you get out of college, the likelihood of you working for somebody your age or younger is pretty slim to none.
Yeah.
So
unless you're working in fast food.
Unless you're working in fast food, right? And I tell students, how are you going to engage with someone that's older than you, that's not your parent, that you need to impress every day because they're your boss? How are you going to do that? And it's daunting for a lot of people to think that all through.
What advice would you give them?
Well, there's some really basic advice, which is do unto others as you would have done unto you.
Respect your elders.
Respect your elders. I think a big key, again, it's what I teach, is be a great listener. And in order to be a good listener, you have to ask really good questions. And, if you can do these little things that your parents teach you when you're a kid, mind your manners, be respectful.
Basics.
It's really the basic stuff, especially for my generation, where those things, as you get older, those things become more important, and recognize that humility is a really, really important thing, to be able to be humble. People make mistakes all the time. I tell students, I guarantee you throughout the semester, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. I'm not standing up here perfect. And by the same token, you have to realize you are going to make a lot of mistakes too. That failures and mistakes are just
feedback. It's
just ways of learning. Yeah. Yeah. It's just the way you learn, by making mistakes, by failing, those things aren't, we make it seem like, it's such a bad thing in society, but it's actually one of the most positive things that can happen to you is for you to fail.
I mean, it can be paralyzing when you're just well, I can't fail at this, so I have to do it right at the perfect time.
Yep.
And then you never even do it because you're too afraid to fail. Or that's like with me when I started my podcast. I was like, I have to get this, I have to get that, I need to do this. But in reality, I just needed to start.
Right.
I did it in a day.
Right. You just, hey,
I overthought it.
I'm just, you can't overthink things. You just got to do it. Just get going on it, and there's things that you're going to look back and go, oh God, I can't believe I was doing it like that. Well, that's all part of the process, Right. It's all good. It really, really is,
Yeah, it's funny.
It is.
So, you got any books or anything, resources or anything for anybody? It doesn't have to be about business or marketing or anything.
There's a classic book out there that I always tell when I'm asked, hey, what book do you read? It's a book I've reread a number of times. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Okay. And it was first published in 1936. It's a book by Dale Carnegie, and How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a phenomenal read. Don't be turned off by how old the book is. It just is it's first of all, nobody reads anymore. Right. There's so many people not reading anymore. And I got to tell you, that's one of my biggest concerns in society is that we don't read like we used to. But this is a book that's really super easy to read. It's really relatable, very, very enjoyable.
Still relevant.
And still way relevant today. Yeah. Yeah. If I'm using it in a classroom, everything I do has to be relevant, right. So I can safely say it's just awesome as far as that goes, Right
on.
So
I'll have to check it out. I've seen it before. I've had it. I like all I'm not going to say it's a self-help book, but I like those types of,
mm-hmm.
Like I like listening to Tony Robbins. I like listening to these kind of guys, people like that. And people make fun of me or say it's cheesy, but there's something you can learn from everybody.
It's funny you bring the Tony Robbins name up, and I use Tony Robbins. I play his clips in my class. Yeah. There's a guy that I think if you can get past some of the presentation that he puts on, he's got a really great message. Yeah. And I guess I get a little turned off by people that would mock that, or that would say, "Oh God, I can't believe you're one of those people." Right. What's wrong with that? Right. Is it what's wrong with that is that you just don't buy in. Well, okay, I'm not on your butt about that. Yeah. So you're and again, it's not like. These are all things that make the world a better place. Yeah. These are people that have a message that helps you become a better person. Yeah.
It's your choice to take it or leave it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. It is,
Might as well. My thing is if I could give myself advice, I'm only 27. If I could give myself advice when I was younger, it would just be to listen to the advice of other people. Obviously you're going to get some crappy advice here and there, but I think just hearing other people's stories and hearing other people's life experiences like I wouldn't have had to make those mistakes as I did. And
right.
You always think, well, I don't really care about their advice, you know, that it's not their life. It's not their life. My life is different or this or that. But the thing I'm learning is everyone can teach you something, whether it's something you want to do or something you don't want to do, you know? So
I'm still learning from I learned from my students. Right. My son is a police officer on the East Coast, and I've learned a lot from him. And so I think if people can continue to have an open mind, no matter what their age, that's a big part of, in my world anyway, being a better person and being a better contributor to society, you know. So
the learning thing is something as well as that I've been trying to do is like, I've watched less TV throughout the years now, and now I'm getting to the point where, like, if you would have told me 5 years ago I'd be sitting here talking about business to you, I wouldn't have given, you know, two hoots about it. But now it's like interesting. I'm like interested in learning about that, or I'm interested to learn about, you know, how a hospital facility runs, or the inner dynamics of team communication or something, you know. It's just, you find it, like, you can get yourself excited about learning about anything, I feel like.
Right. Well, I've always wanted to tell you, and this is such a great forum to do it. You know, one of the things that I learned from you is the importance of keeping my physical being in shape. You know, we talk about a lot of what we've talked about today is mental and involves your mind, but you know, balancing, you know, keeping myself physically fit with mentally fit had never been a priority before in my life. So, to this day, I still tell Dagan, my significant other, I tell her, man, I just miss that Andy Munt and the training that you offered us. It was just great stuff. Really, really was.
I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, seriously.
But, I think if I would go back and do it now, I'd be doing it a lot different.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I understand the impact of the physical and everything, but I don't think I place as much emphasis on it as I used to.
So you've gotten some more balance in your life, in other words.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because as soon as I got on my undergrad, I was exercise science, and all I did was teach classes, and I was just engulfed in that. And like, after a while, it got old and it got boring, and I wanted something else. And now I'm not saying it's important, but I think you shouldn't put so much emphasis on it. It should be 30, 30, 30, or 25, 25, 25 with everything else. But I think there's definitely a place for it, you know? So.
Well, I think, you know, for me, looking at you and that time in your life, you know, it was clearly, from my perspective as an outsider, as a customer, you know, here's a guy who's really passionate about it. So from my perspective, it was passion, you know, and no, I knew I was never going to become so passionate that I lived it, ate it, breathed it, you know, but having someone that was passionate about it helped me get some balance.
Filled your bucket a little bit.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, you know, I've met this person who's really super passionate about it, and you know, I'm going to take a little bit of that just to give myself some more balance in my life.
So you need to hang out with a group of people, one here, one there, so that you're sucking all the energy from them. You're getting the best of everyone, you know. That's why you should surround yourself.
I like that thought. Right? Yeah, it's totally.
It's like, people are like, I mean, I have a couple close friends, but I have all these other people that I'm like, oh, well, I want to get Marty on. Well, I want to get this other person on. I want to do that. And they're like all from different walks of life or offer something different. And I just want to draw from them. And you know,
it's great. That's really, that makes you a well-rounded person in the long run. You know, really, really does. It really does. You know, it's almost like traveling the world. You know, you get all these different experiences. It's the same thing when you expose yourself to different people. You know, it's just like traveling the world. It really, really is. You know,
when I started, I was like, is there going to be anybody interesting in Iowa? And the more I think about it, I'm like, that was the dumbest thing I thought. It's like, because, you know, it doesn't matter where you're from or anything, you know, you can learn something from anybody.
Oh, so. Yeah.
And everyone's an expert in something.
And there are people that have their own little niche, you know, niche, and this is what I'm really good at and what I'm really passionate about, you know. Oh yeah, I'm gonna wind up getting you a list of people, because living here for the past 15 years, there's some really fascinating people here. Cool. You know, Iowa's a great state, and Iowans are great people, and many of them have done really great things that are worth talking about. You know,
I want to talk about them.
Yeah.
So I'm open to anybody.
No, it's good. It's really good that you're interested in that. So.
Anything else before we get out of here?
No, I wish you well. I wish all of your listeners well. I hope that there's, you know, they're getting something out of this, that there is a little takeaway. And if nothing else, just the fact that here's a guy who's brave enough to embark on something he's passionate about, you know, it's cool.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's it. We'll have to get you on another time.
Yeah. Have me come back.
Yeah, we'll get you. Alrighty.
Thank you.